Frank Ragnow, desperate to play, and an old friend rejoins the show.
You are Locked On Lions, your daily Detroit Lions podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's good, everybody? Matt Derry with you. It is a Wednesday edition of Locked On Lions right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day on a Wednesday, October 9th and a Thursday, October 10th. Thank you to everybody that makes this your first listen and checks us out wherever you get your podcasts. And that includes subscribing and watching for free on our Locked On Lions YouTube channel. Shout out to our everydayers who are out there that watch or listen to the podcast daily. Appreciate all of you as well. Locked On Lions today, brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. Our guest today, Trey Wingo, is going to join us. Trey used to join me on the old Detroit Sports 105.1 shows back in like 2013 and 14 and 15. He was just always a great guest when he was at ESPN hosting NFL Live and all their NFL content. Now he's with the DraftKings Network and host their pregame power-up shows on Mondays and Thursday nights at 6. Always see him all over Twitter at Wingo Z. He's awesome. Trey Wingo going to join us momentarily on the program. Also today, we got to discuss this. And by the way, you can follow us on Twitter at Derry Speaks, at Locked On Lions, Matt Derry Facebook fan page. And don't forget, use our SpeakPipe voicemail system. You want to be the call of the day? We'll do one on Friday. Go to speakpipe.com/Derry, D-E-R-Y, podcast page. All right, very quickly before we get to Trey Wingo, Lions-Cowboys Sunday in Dallas. I'm going to say it again. I've been saying it all week. The Lions should win this game. There's no excuses now. I know they've been screwed by the refs twice down there. Always crazy-ish happens when the Lions play at Jerry World. But go in this game, man. Dallas is banged up. Micah Parsons might not play. Bland's going to be out. Lawrence is out. Look at the Cowboy running backs. Look at their this is not Dallas. Yes, it's a tough place to play. Yes, Dak Prescott is really, really good and always seems to beat the Lions blitzes and everything else. Just go win this game. Because next week you got to go to Minnesota. The Lions should win Sunday in Dallas. And they're going to get Frank Ragnow back. Want to know how tough and crazy Frank Ragnow is. And this was relayed this morning on the Costa and Jansen program on 97.1 The Ticket. Dan Campbell was on the air with the guys this morning. And he was asked about Frank Ragnow. And it's like, Ragnow's probably going to come back from that torn pectoral muscle. It's been a couple of weeks, had the bye week. But he wanted to play 2 weeks ago, even with a torn pectoral muscle against Seattle. And this was on 97.1 this morning. Campbell was asked about kind of the Ragnow, and he said there was a playful interaction when Ragnow was outside the training room and Campbell was down there talking to the trainers. This is an exact quote from Dan Campbell this morning. Quote, "Last week, right before Seattle, I walked down there to talk to our trainer and somebody punches me against the wall. I'm not even paying attention because I'm looking at our trainer, and then I get punched again, and I realize it's Frank, and he's trying to show me that his pec is great. That's his way of telling me, look how strong I am. It's good. It's healed. He's in a good mindset. He's ready, and he wants to go." End quote. Folks, listen. A torn pectoral muscle right there in your side, in your stomach. It would be weeks for most NFL players to play after tearing their pectoral muscle. You're moving side to side, you're blocking, you're running, all the things. You're in the trenches as Ragnow. If I had a torn pectoral muscle, I wouldn't be able to go to the gym for months. I'd be down for the count, walking around like an old man, which I am at 51 years of age. This dude wanted to play 2 weeks ago and was punching Dan Campbell against a wall numerous times. I love it. That's the kind of guy you want on your team. That's a leader, and that's one of the best interior offensive linemen in the game, Frank Ragnow. I love that story. I just think that's absolutely crazy, but really cool. So he'll be back there Sunday. You know he will. playing for the Lions in Dallas against the Cowboys. All right. Trey Wingo from the DraftKings Network coming up next. Let's pay a few bills and then talk to Trey. Mentioned before, Locked On Lions brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports that's different and it's accessible to everybody. Here's what you do. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for their stats for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long at PrizePicks. It is a lot of fun. This week, what do you think? Tyreek Hill's going to go for more than 97.5 receiving yards? I love Saquon Barkley. More than on 67.5 rushing yards for the Eagles. PrizePicks is awesome. All right. Want to play PrizePicks alongside some legends like Drewski or Joe Budden or MMA champ Sean O'Malley? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. It's fun. Here's what you got to do. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, PrizePicks app, download it, use the code LOCKEDONNFL, and you'll get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. And we're also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Want to bet on these baseball playoffs? Tigers, Guardians, Games 3, Game 4. Could be a Game 5 on Saturday. You're going to have the whole college football slate as well. You can do all of that at FanDuel. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, go to FanDuel. Don't go to the other apps. Go to FanDuel because you can check the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. That's the beauty of the FanDuel app. It's the best. Get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Free money when all you got to do is place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Joining us now, it's an honor to have this guy back with us. It's been about 8 or 9 years since the old 105.1 days in Detroit on the radio side when Trey was at ESPN and I was at Detroit Sports 105.1. Now part of the DraftKings Network pregame power-up show Mondays and Thursdays at 6. It's our old buddy, Trey Wingo on Locked On Lions. What's up, brother?
Matt, how are you? Good to see you, man.
Back at you, my friend. How you been?
Good. Everything's wonderful, and everything's wonderful in Detroit. Coming off the bye, feeling good about the way the Lions are playing.
It's wild, isn't it? You and I went back, and I appreciated you always coming on with us. Back then, that was the Jim Caldwell decent teams. Yeah. There was always the question of, we finally have a coach that everybody likes, yet he made a lot of mistakes. The town was very split on the Reverend Jim Caldwell. Fast forward, obviously, Patricia and Quinn was a disaster, but can you believe where the Lions are now? This is unbelievable, right?
It is. And the best thing about it for me is, a guy like Dan Campbell, for those that don't know, like his background, Dan was a wild man tight end, backup sort of journeyman tight end for a bunch of teams in the NFL. And I remember when he got the temporary interim job in Miami all those years ago. And, Tim Hasselbeck and I were doing NFL Live, and, Tim was a teammate at times with Dan. He's like, I can't believe Dan Campbell is the head coach. But the way he's embraced this and the way he has sort of forged his identity onto the team, I think is remarkable. And I think that's the best thing about what we've seen in the Dan Campbell era is that they have a culture, and that culture starts from Dan and the way he relates to his players. And, that's a very new school mentality for a very old school player. And I really appreciate the way that it works. Like, I want people like Dan to succeed. I want people like Mike McDaniel to succeed because they're different. They're doing things in a different way. And I'm always open to that possibility and that idea. And I just love to see the way it's come to fruition in Detroit for Dan.
It's a testament to him, right? And you talk about the entire league every day, but like Ben Johnson stays Aaron Glenn stays. This has never happened here. Like
Yeah.
Hank Fraley could be a O-line coach or the highest pay or an OC somewhere. They all stay. It's remarkable. It never happens here. So it's almost like it's a fairy tale for Lions fans, Trey.
It is. And just interesting to hear those names, right? These are all guys that played a long time and were very successful in the NFL. That's the other thing I think that Dan has done a really remarkable job with. He knows who he is and he knows who he isn't, right? And that's, to me, that's the most important thing anybody can be. I try and live by two rules. Number one, know who you are, and more importantly, know who you're not. And Dan is not one of those guys that was like, oh, it's my game, it's my show, I'm going to do it. He's like, no, I know what I know, and I'm going to make sure I bring in people who are smarter than me to help in things that I'm that may not be my strength, that may not be my fortitude, may not be my specialty. And you just listen to the list that you just named and all the other former players that are on his staff. I think that's a real testament to Dan, that he puts people around him that help him succeed, and he's not afraid to lean on their help.
4 weeks in, Lions are 3-1. Then they get a bye this early. And you look at the schedule, it's a slobber knocker the next 5 weeks with 4 on the road. What do you think of the early bye? Obviously, I mean, Lions have guys that are hurt, but they're not coming back for a while. Too early for this? Or is it like, hey, it's the Lions, they'll roll with it?
Well, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, as Dan knows, you can only control the things you can control. I would always absolutely prefer a later bye. Like, give me past week 7 or 8. That would be my preference. But they've known this was going to be the case once the schedule came out, and I'm sure Dan and his entire staff had a plan for it. So it doesn't surprise them, or it didn't catch them off guard in any way, shape, or form.
Trey Wingo with us, courtesy of the DraftKings Network, pregame power-up host Mondays and Thursdays at 6. Of course, spent many years at ESPN. You see him on Twitter, too. He's phenomenal with all of his content. We love Trey. You look at the entire entity of the NFC North. Are you going, oh, my gosh, it's almost like the AL Central around here. You got Tigers and Guardians playing. The Royals are still into it, and everybody used to call it the Comedy Central. Now the NFC North all of a sudden is the big dog. Can you believe this?
Well, it's interesting, right? I thought the AFC North was probably going to be the most competitive division in football this year. And then you look at what's going on in the NFC North. Obviously, Detroit is the king of the hill because they won the division and they made it to the NFC Championship game last year. I was very high on Jordan Love and the Packers. Obviously, his injury has sort of slowed that track, but I still think they're going to be very good. The Minnesota Vikings, to me, are the most surprising team in football. I did not see that coming in any way, shape, or form. And then you have the Bears. Caleb Williams, back-to-back 300 passing yard games in that game against the Panthers. And I get it. It was against the Panthers. I understand that. But what are you supposed to do against a bad team? Beat them decisively. And they did. And Caleb threw – that was his coming out party to me. All Caleb has heard all season long is, but Jaden Daniels. And he had a Jaden Daniels type performance on Sunday. So, I think the NFC North is going to be really, really interesting as we go through this entire season.
Go back to Minnesota. Is it just KOC and Flores is just some sort of combination and they're just so well coached, or are they just better than everybody thought they'd be? And Darnold is just in a better spot.
Well, it clearly, I mean, coaching and culture matters, and we can talk about that with a player that used to be in the NFC North and is now in the AFC East, if you want. But look, KOC is great, Flores is great. Sam Darnold is only 27 years old. I think we all go through this thing where if we don't see someone like Jaden Daniels right out of the gate, or CJ Stroud, or Patrick Mahomes come out and have all this kind of success right away, it's like, well, these guys suck. Well, go take a look at that 2018 draft class, right? Baker Mayfield was the number 1 overall pick. He's on his 4th team. And as the Lions unfortunately found out earlier this season, he's found his footing finally in Tampa Bay. Sam Darnold is basically the same age as Joe Burrow. He's 27 years old. He was in a terrible situation with the Jets. Again, we should talk about them in a minute. And he bounced around. He went to Carolina. He was a backup in San Francisco. And now he got an opportunity in Minnesota, and he's making the most of it. And it certainly helps when you have a Justin Jefferson to throw to. So Minnesota has done a really, really good job of putting a team together with a quarterback they probably weren't expecting to play. But I'm happy to see it for Sam, because you can just give up on people so quickly in this league. The old adage is NFL stands for not for long. But sometimes the recipe needs to bake a little more. The sauce needs to marinate a little bit. And I think Sam would tell you that, over time, he's matured a little bit. He's understood the process a little better, and you're seeing the results on the field.
All right, here comes the softball. I'm going to lob you. Dan Campbell was a part of that class of 2021 coaches that came in that included Robert Saleh, who everybody here, including the guy you're talking to, said, oh, we got to get the Detroit guy, defense, toughness. He looks like the Lions coach. He's from Dearborn. And all of a sudden he's out of a job. Aaron Rodgers is not out of a job. All right, go, Trey. You seem to be wanting to touch on it. It's kind of ironic Saleh did not end up here, and now he's gone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we talk about culture, right? The Jets' culture has been terrible forever. Like, we can get into the specifics of whether or not Robert Saleh was a good coach and the things he did wrong, and there are certainly things that I think he would do differently. But what other team, Matt, what other team would say through 5 games of the season, all right, we're 2-3. We have a home game coming up this Monday night against the Buffalo Bills team that has lost 2 straight games, and Josh Allen. What happened to Josh Allen for the first 3 games? Because against the Ravens, he was 16 of 29, and against the Texans, he was 9 of 30. So you have a wounded Buffalo Bills team coming into your place. If you beat that team, you're in first place in your division.
Right.
You're in first place in your division because you're both 3-3, and you have the tiebreaker at that point. What other team would say, pretty good time to fire our head coach?
Right. Yeah.
It's there hasn't been a Jets coach with a winning record since 2000.
Wow.
They have not a single one of those head coaches. And, Robert Saleh's calling card is defense. Their defense is good. What's the problem with the Jets? Their offense. Who do they have running their offense? Nathaniel Hackett. Who wanted Nathaniel Hackett? Aaron Rodgers. And now Woody Johnson gets up there. This is my favorite. Woody Johnson gets up there and says, yeah, I talked to Aaron Monday night, but I didn't talk about firing Robert Saleh. Who is believing that? I mean, that's less believable than anything a political candidate would say when they're stumping for office. I mean, if you expect us to swallow that garbage, get out of here. And then it gets even worse because the reports came out, I think, from CBS and NFL Network that Saleh was thinking about firing Nathaniel Hackett. And before that could happen, miraculously, suddenly Woody Johnson decides to fire Robert Saleh. But Aaron Rodgers had no input. Get out of here. Come on, man. Here's what I would say. Woody Johnson can get up there and say he had no input, but what he didn't say is Aaron Rodgers didn't have any influence. And if you don't think Aaron Rodgers had influence over this thing, when they have ceded the entire organization to him, as soon as he missed mandatory minicamp to go to frickin' Egypt, the Jets basically had nobody that could control Aaron Rodgers in any way, shape, or form. Okay? They let him do whatever he wanted to do. And I get it. Oh, it's a once-in-a-lifetime trip. I've been around the NFL a long time. I played a long time. You can read a calendar.
Right.
You can read a calendar. I'm sure you bought tickets that could be exchanged for a different date. Like, I'm not buying any of this. Well, I had these plans. My friend Herm Edwards likes to say, any plan that can't be changed is a bad plan. Okay? So they have ceded complete control of their organization to a soon-to-be 41-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles injury who threw 3 interceptions. Robert Saleh's defense wasn't the reason they lost that game. Aaron Rodgers threw a pick 6 that ended up being the winning margin for Minnesota, and he threw another interception, which was horrendous, and then he threw the game-sealing interception. So clearly, to fix all of those problems on the offense, we should fire Robert Saleh. The Jets are a joke. They're a joke. And Aaron Rodgers, look, man, look at his track record, okay? Mike McCarthy was fired in season, all right? They had to change everything the way Aaron Rodgers wanted it when Matt LaFleur got there. Aaron Rodgers wanted all the money, so they didn't have anything left to pay Davante Adams. So Davante Adams went to the Raiders where he's miserable, and they're trying to get him back reunited. This is who Aaron Rodgers is. This is who he is. He's a Hall of Fame first ballot quarterback. There's no doubt about that. You could argue he's on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks in the NFL.
Sure.
But is he a leader? Is he a guy that can bring things up to his level? Is he a guy that guys rally around? I don't know the answer to those questions. For all his success in Green Bay, they went to and won 1 Super Bowl. How many one and dones did they have under Aaron Rodgers with the Green Bay Packers? There's a lot of question marks about whether Aaron Rodgers can do what everybody in New York thinks he's going to do, or the reason they made the trade for him. And I think those questions are still very, very much unanswered.
Trey Wingo coming in hot. We love it. Coming up next, let's get into Lions-Cowboys. Want to get Trey's thoughts on the Dallas team that the Lions are going to see this coming Sunday at 4:25. But first, we got to tell you about our friends at Hillsdale College. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses that include Constitution 101, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, and so much more. Time is our most precious commodity, folks, so don't waste it scrolling through the same mind-numbing content for hours and hours on your phone. How can you spend it wisely to improve yourself? It's simple. Our friends at Hillsdale College. The courses are great. Like we said, all of Hillsdale's courses are self-paced. You can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Looked on the YouTube comments last night for the Tuesday show. A bunch of people happy that we are involved with our friends at Hillsdale College. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/lockedon to enroll. There's no cost. It's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to register. hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Our friends from DraftKings Network, Trey Wingo is with us. Check him out on the pregame power-up, Mondays and Thursdays at 6, the alternate routes pod with Kevin Frazier as well. K-Phrase, I remember when he used to fill in on the Jim Rome show. Yeah. You guys have good chemistry. I'm sure that's fun to do, right?
Yeah, it's a blast. It's great to be working with Kevin again. We worked years ago, obviously, together on SportsCenter, so it's nice to be with a familiar face for sure.
All right, Detroit at Dallas, Sunday, 4:25. I've said this all week, and I know it's only Wednesday. The Lions have to win this game. I mean, this is not the Cowboys that they saw, in the playoffs in 2014 and the infamous picked up flag. This isn't the Cowboys from last year either, where they got robbed on the Taylor Decker play. Do you agree with me, Trey? This is such a winnable game for the Lions.
Well, it is, except I don't know which Dallas defense is showing up, right? Like, if you guys are playing the Dallas run defense from the first 2 weeks of the season, yeah, I think you guys are going to roll them. I mean, they were giving up yards and yards and yards. In the last 3 games, they've really buckled down on that run defense. And you look at what the Steelers, they got nothing going. Obviously, the Giants game, they got very little going. So I'm curious to see how that defense will be tested against a really, really good rushing attack from the Detroit Lions. But I'd feel a lot better about it if we were playing that Dallas defense from the first 2 weeks. And the other thing that's really weird about this game is that obviously you want to get pressure with Aiden Hutchinson, right? And
sure.
He's what he had 3 sacks in the first half a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Or the first quarter, was it? Was it
it was the first quarter. Yeah.
First quarter, yeah. So you obviously want to get pressure. Here's the weirdest note that I found in researching for this game. Dak Prescott has an 83 passer rating with no pressure. That's third worst among all quarterbacks in the NFL. But he has a passer rating of 124.5 when under pressure. That's the best in the NFL. He has 4 interceptions when not under pressure. He has 5 touchdowns and 0 interceptions when under pressure. He has the best touchdown to interception ratio and the highest pass rating in the NFL when under pressure. That makes no sense.
No.
So when he has a clean pocket and all the time in the world, he's really average. But when you put someone in his face, suddenly Dak puts on the cape. So it's just a really, really strange thing. And you have all these numbers. Well, Dak is 3-0 in his career against the Lions. That doesn't mean, or 5-0 rather. That doesn't mean anything. Jared Goff is whatever against the Cowboys. That doesn't mean anything because, as we all know, they should have won that game last December in Texas anyway. So because of like you said, the Taylor Decker play. So I don't look at anything like that. I do look at other things like those numbers, and I look at the fact that under Dan Campbell, the Lions are 1-1-1 coming off a bye, and under Mike McCarthy, the Cowboys are 3-0 coming off a bye, or against teams rather coming off a bye. So, those are things that I find curious. I can't come up with a reason for it, much in the same way I can't come up with a reason why Dak is better when he's getting someone about to hit him. Like, it doesn't make much sense. So those would be my concerns if you are the Lions.
It is interesting, and you mentioned Aiden Hutchinson before. He's just been going up against basically backup right tackle after backup right tackle, and he's done well. The talk here is, all right, who's going to provide pressure if they double team him, and if there's somebody off the other edge because Davenport's hurt. You mentioned Derek Barnes or you mentioned Dak under pressure, was the Derek Barnes play last year where he had Dak for a safety and he hit CeeDee Lamb for like a 90-yard touchdown. So
95 yards.
Yeah. They've played weird games, Trey, but in this instance, Lions off a bye and pretty healthy. Ragnow back, Branch back. To me, go down there and win because next week you got to go to Minnesota.
Lions are the better team in terms of how they've played so far this season. The Lions are the better team. But as you said, it's always something weird when these two teams get together. I do want to point out one thing that I love about the Lions. In 2022, we looked this up. The 49ers, after the team that played the week after they played the 49ers, every single one of those teams lost. The only team that didn't was Kansas City because they had a bye.
I know where you're going with this. We mentioned this yesterday.
And beat 41-17. Every team that plays the Lions this year, really, there's a hangover effect.
Big time.
Go look at what we talked about. Tampa Bay went in there and really played well, and then they got slobber knocked at home by Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos. Every team that has played the Lions the next week, they feel it, and that's the physicality and the culture and sort of the identity that I was alluding to with Dan Campbell. He has really put his presence on his players.
Tell me about what you've seen from Dallas from a secondary perspective. They weren't tested this past week. It's the Steelers offense, which is abysmal, and George Pickens is jogging through routes. This is Jared Goff, Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams, fresh, fast track on that carpet down in Dallas. How do you like that matchup?
Well, I think it favors the Lions. Look, the Lions are the better team from 1 through 53. And I do like the fact that they have multiple weapons that they can attack that secondary with. And, the Lions are going to see a wounded Dallas defense. Tank Lawrence isn't going to be there. We're not sure whether Mike is going to be there or not. So there's all kinds of issues. They should be able to sort of pick their poison against this team. In terms of how they want to attack it. Do they want to beat them up on the ground, or they want to take them apart through the air? But this Dallas defense has been pretty resilient over the last few games. And I get it. It was Daniel Jones and the Giants, although they just went up to Seattle and took care of business, which was a little bit of a shock. And like you said, it was Justin Fields and that Steelers offense. And there may be a change coming at quarterback because Russell Wilson is now healthy for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So this will be by far, since they took on the Saints in week 2, when the Saints were rolling, they scored 91 points through the first 2 games. This will be an offense like that can attack you in a lot of different ways, and we'll see how this Dallas defense can respond.
Final question for you, Trey. NFC hierarchy.
Starts with Detroit.
Starts
with Detroit. Obviously, I still think when healthy, the 49ers have the best roster in football, 1 through 53. They're not healthy. Things aren't going their way. They really gave that game away against the Cardinals on Sunday with a couple of critical turnovers there. They were going in for basically a game-clinching, game-sealing score, the fumble, and then the Cardinals hit that 4th and 5 to go ahead, and then Brock Purdy's arm gets hit, and that interception sealed the game. I really still like the 49ers, but they're not playing great and they're not healthy. I think right now, top to bottom, how they've played, you have to look and start with the Detroit Lions in the NFC.
And who's number 2 right now?
Is there a number 2?
Minnesota? Is it Minnesota or is it too early?
Yes. I would say it probably is Minnesota. And I know it feels like, wait a minute. They're 5-0 and the Lions are 3-1. Right. But I take a Zen philosopher approach to a lot of this. We'll see. I think the Lions are the last team in the NFL to start 5-0 and miss the postseason a few years ago. And it's totally different culture, totally different dynamic. I get that. I'm just saying a lot of things look great in September and maybe early October, and then they don't look so good in November and December. So I'm thrilled for the start for the Vikings, but I'm going to need to see more. I know who the Lions are. I know what they are. I know what they can do. I've seen it. I take a very Zen philosopher approach to everything else. We'll see.
Trey, great to see you. Thanks for doing this. All the best, my man.
Thank you very much, Matt. And check out the pregame power up Monday and Thursday nights on DraftKings Network, 6 o'clock Eastern.
There he is, Trey Wingo with us on a Wednesday, Locked On Lions. Always love having our buddy Trey Wingo on the program. Always. Man, he was great. His rant on the Jets and Aaron Rodgers was fun. A lot of fun. All right. Do not forget Marcus Mosher tomorrow, Thursday crossover. He's the host of Locked on Cowboys. Will join us tomorrow as we'll talk Lions and Dallas and really dig deep into the matchup. Enjoy your evening, everybody. We're back in tomorrow with the crossover.